Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are back on the 229 dev server, and it's now time to have a look at another Hungarian vehicle that is coming to the subtech tree. This is the Zrinyi 2. It's going to be a rank 2 2.7 SPG, and to be honest, it's in good company. The good old Italians have a ton of these Semavente vehicles, which are all basically just worse versions of the Stug. The only one which is actually any decent is the Stug itself, but also the 7546 M43. The Zrinyi 2 is really no different. I would actually say it's in a slightly better position than a lot of the Semaventes, not just because of its BR, but also its general mobility. After playing the other Zrinyi for a while, it's always fun to play. The major drawback, especially of this vehicle though, is the reload, which isn't a drawback on the other one. The vehicle, armor-wise, which is pretty important for SPGs when you don't have a turret, is okay, is probably the best way I can put it. On the actual superstructure itself, it gets 75mm worth of armor, and also it gets this additional track armor. So if you screw up a shot, like if you shoot for this area, and instead you're slightly low, it's going to hit the tracks, and now that 75 becomes 95, which can be a little bit of a problem. The lower glacis, though, is 35mm, so no additional protection. People will be able to go straight through this, and then also at the same time, if you're looking straight at it, you have this, which, if it is slightly angled down, is really not that hard to get through. And since this is an SPG, it will be a lot of planes going after it, and you can see it only has 13mm on the top, which is going to be great for planes just trying to nuke it at this level. 50 cals would just go straight through this machine on the top of it, and that's going to be very sad to play the vehicle. It does have a 4-man crew though. They're all sat in the front of the vehicle, as you can see. Ammo is behind, and then also you have the engine and the transmission. The engine is actually the same as the Turan 1, the 260 horsepower one, even though this thing is slightly heavier, so it should be a little bit less mobile. The Turan 1 itself is actually a pretty mobile vehicle, so the Zrinyi 2 should be okay as well. It does also have the same or similar transmission, so you can move around at 40 kilometers an hour, going forward or backwards, and enjoy yourself, like having a great time with the mobility of it. So even though you're down a turret on this thing, you do technically have at least a decent amount of, being able to traverse and going through to get the gun on the target. 8mm once again of add-on armor, 25 below it, so if you get shot in the side, you're just going to die, which sucks. And then at the same time, I can kind of show you what I mean by like the protection analysis stuff. So let's get, I don't know, like a Stuart, which is a pretty standard vehicle for this. We'll get the actual shell that most people use, so the 85. You can see on the protection map that it can just go straight through the lower glacis because it only has 60mm of penetration. You have this plate, and then you have another one below it. So even with that, you can just, basically go straight through. And then if you get it right, you can hit the gunner and then also the person who's behind. And then you can always go through the gun mantlets, which is always nice on a vehicle like this. So yeah, even against one of the vehicles which doesn't have exactly the best rounds in the business or the best gun, but a good fire rate, you can just keep plinking at this thing and just keep going through the bottom. What's interesting though is a lot of vehicles through that lower area, usually you run into a transmission. Because you don't on this vehicle, the round is just going to explode without hitting the transmission and just going to nuke everything inside, giving it even less survivability. So why do you play this type of vehicle? The 105mm Mavag 4043M, this gun right here. Isn't got the best targeting speed, generally will be fine moving around, but it does have some quite funny shells. So you have a HE shell, which is the stock shell, with over 2 kilos of HE, and then you have a heat shell with 120mm of penetration and 2.3 kg, so actually more explosive mass than the HE. I feel like a lot of people are going to look at this round and be like, oh my god, there is a heat shell at 2.7 which has a lot of penetration, must be really good, blah 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 blah. And it's like, well yeah, the shell itself might be quite nice, but if you forget about pretty much every other factor then, you know, then people question why this thing is at 2.7. But because of the stuff that we've talked about, the issues with the armor, the heavier nature of it compared to the Turan, and also the reload, those are going to put it in kind of bad state, and it isn't just going to be penetration on the actual gun itself. So I think personally this is still just a worse version of the Stug, just like all of these other vehicles are. I feel kind of bad for the Stug because it's seen as kind of like the golden child of the area, and you can understand why when you have a look at things like the Zrinyi 2, and then also stuff like the Semaventes. They're just in so much better conditions compared to the rest of them. So the reload is quite long, but as I said, the mobility of it means that you can actually traverse quite effectively. So if there's a person over here, you can turn and be able to shoot pretty quickly, which is nice. The reverse is quite nice as well, so you can get out and get back into combat pretty quickly. It doesn't have any other armament apart from the 105, so you don't have like a machine gun or anything like that. You're just stuck with the donkey gun, and then after that you also don't have any like smoke grenades, or you don't have any way of being able to stop the enemy kind of pushing on you, or stop the enemy from advancing, or even for you to reload. So you're really going to have to play this thing quite defensively, or if you play it aggressively, it'll have to be in a down tier because your armor just can't stand up. And even if, like it does, even if all of those factors go incredibly well, you then have the plane threat through this top area where everybody will know that the crew's in the front of this machine, and they're also pretty tightly packed. So what this means is, because you have everybody in this like forward compartment, you will be able to take this out super easily by either hitting the ammo or just hitting the crew that's inside. You can see that the round is overpressuring vehicles though, the heat, so that'll be quite nice for it. If it penetrates, it'll be able to do quite a decent amount of damage. But is it worth a 11-second reload, and is it worth just kind of waiting there for things to happen, and then every so often nothing happening because it's a low tier heat shell? A lot of people don't ever bring that up, where you can have this like crazy shell and then you like hit a target on the side, but because it like clips something, or because there's like additional spaced armor or whatever, you just end up doing no damage, and this thing is going to fall for that as well. The vehicle looks fine, you know, it'll be one of those that is forgotten about pretty quickly just because of its slow reload, and also the fact that it's a rank 2, but at the same time it'll be nice to grind out. Hopefully it'll be a quick one that can fit in lineups with other TDs. Just wish it was closer to rank 3 so we could use it for specials and also dailies. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.